Good morning, welcome to Politics in Color. Are my friends with me?
Absolutely. Good morning.
Good morning, Politics in Color with me.
Good morning to you, Brian. How are you, sir?
Today, we all get or we have present issues. Oh, you can hear me. I'm going to start to tell you.
It looks like we're having some technical difficulties there, raising Brian. Good morning and welcome to the program. I'm Jonathan Clark. That was Brian Jenkins that you were seeing just now. We're going to get his technical matters all resolved, and he'll be back joining us momentarily. Welcome to the show. It's politicsincolor.com. Join the conversation on Monday, January 20th, and if it's January 20th every 4 years, that means that there's an inauguration happening in Washington, D.C. This one is happening for Donald Trump, who will become the 47th president of the United States after having been 4 years ago the 45th president of the United States. He's returning to office today in what will become a truly unprecedented event. It's the first time that the United States has ever brought to office an individual who is a convicted felon, and so that alone makes it a singular event in American history. And those of you who will be watching history take place live on the places of your choice. We certainly hope that you will stay tuned in here to politicsincolor.com both now for the next half hour, and then later on today we'll be back again at 8 o'clock with another program where we'll have more of our experts here from politicsincolor.com, joined by special guests who will help bring their own special insights to bring their special insights to the program. So again, this is the culmination of a long fought, hard political battle that was waged last year, and a little bit beyond that. It looked like, how did we get to this point? Well, it looked like Joe Biden was going to be up against Donald Trump in the 2024 race, and that certainly was the case until about late summer, when Joe Biden dropped out of the race and handed the reins over to Kamala Harris, who then faced Donald Trump herself. And he's looks like we've got Neil Foote joining us. Neil, by the way, is the founding editor of politicsincolor.com. Neil, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Jonathan. And we are on the cusp of another day in American history that to paraphrase another past president, will live in infamy.
It does seem to have a very December 7th, 1941 or something. Yeah, feel to it. Depending on who you are, this is either a moment of great delight or a moment of great dismay, or even worse, maybe trepidation. And for some, this is very much like looking into the abyss.
The enthusiasm of those who support soon to be President Trump for the second time is pretty high, right? This is a coronation of a president that they felt lost the election in 2020. and felt he got cheated, right? And there's still so many of his supporters who believe that he was cheated of an election in 2020. Well, and I'm sure we can spend lots of time talking about that. But at the same time, I think you know, there's an opportunity you could look at it for the Democrats to figure out what the heck went wrong and how do they prepare for the midterm elections? How do they prepare for the 2028 election? And what we know based on what President-elect Trump has said and his supporters is that they are coming out pretty strong in the next 100 days, and it could rewrite, certainly the history and the efforts and successes of President Biden and Vice President Harris. That could set a bunch of us way back, Jonathan, and I think that's the concern, and for so many folks about what will this country look like in the next 100 days, no less the next 4 years.
Yeah, in the next 100 days, we are. This is one of those moments where you strap in and buckle up, and hold your breath. During his campaign and over the past over the past couple of months since his election, Donald Trump has made a number of promises that he says he intends to keep. So, talking about the first and one of the most immediate ones is TikTok, and promising to sign an executive order on an inauguration day. Of course, that's something that happened quite recently. TikTok went dark for a day, and Donald Trump has promised to work some magic there. On immigration, though, which is a lot more serious than TikTok, Donald Trump has promised one of the not one of, but the most massive deportation of illegal immigrants. On his, and he said not illegal, undocumented rather, immigrants on his first day in office, which if that is executed would be phenomenal.
Not only phenomenal, but transformational in terms of what this really means. In conversations that I've had with folks around the country, I think there's one on the immigration issue and whether it's deporting immigrants who are undocumented and have committed crimes. I think there's probably pretty widespread support from Democrats, moderates, and Republicans, and even probably some progressives, that you don't want bad people in your community, right? And this is a neighborhood by neighborhood issue, and unfortunately, the conservatives want to exploit a single incident as it happening to every immigrant. So I think everyone agrees that we don't want criminals or bad actors in our community. The biggest concern, right, is that with these sweeps, and we saw this during his first presidency, right, is that Trump sent border patrols into companies, into chicken farms and other places that were actually sweeping folks who had proper green cards, who actually had been employed by companies doing good work for the productivity of our country. And I think that's the fear that we have, and that's the concern that we want to prevent. That even these wide-scale sweeps that we've heard, in fact, we heard even as recently as yesterday, Jonathan, right, that they were going to do this massive roundup in Chicago and other Democratic-led cities, and now that's been kind of tempered a little bit. So I think if, what we know is that the general tone will be fear, fear amongst the immigration community, kind of change that mindset. But what we don't want, right, which is tipping the thing, is if this is done, that I would bet on it that there are parts of this economy. Once again, we saw this back during his first administration. There were immigrants working on farms in the heartland of America. Fruits were not getting picked and harvested from farms, vegetables. So prices on those items were going up. And we had documented reports of, bushels of produce going poorly because they couldn't be produced because farmers couldn't find enough people to pick those up. That may seem like a small issue to some, but that goes to all the argument about how do you protect, how do you do the right thing in getting rid of bad actors, and then figuring out how we best work with companies, farmers, small business people, people who we revere as the heart, as the heart of America, beating the blood into our food supply line and our supply chain, who suddenly are removed because of a policy that is to, as he is, President-elect Trump has said, is shock and awe, and that's what we want. And that's, yeah, I think that's the concern, that we've just got to be very careful and have to be prepared to respond to that messaging in an aggressive way.
Yeah, immigrants make good talking points. They're great fodder for the MAGA base, especially during an election. And there are any number of promises you can make around the elimination of immigrants from American soil, undocumented immigrants. But the reality, as you very deftly pointed out, is that their presence is not only felt, but I guess you could say enjoyed by the greater economy, certainly. And I don't believe, with one of the things I think has probably been missing from the conversation has been eggs. No one's talking about eggs anymore, not nearly as much as they were prior to the November election. But hey, the removal of massive swaths of undocumented immigrants will remind you of eggs. They will remind you of lettuce and everything else, oranges and every other sort of American crop, where these very skilled workers are part of our supply chain.
And I just pulled up some data from the Customs and Border Patrol, and it has this wonderful chart of these are stats from the organization that our new president will be leading, and this chart shows Southwest land border encounters. And if you look at it from actually, the total number of land border encounters, and this is folks who are coming to the border, and we've heard terms of massive amounts of people coming into. Here's what we know is that in 2022, that total was 2.4 million. In 2024, that number was 2.1 million. So what we're seeing is a decline, and certainly early in 2025, we're seeing that number so far. Again, we're only midway through January. So I mean, we've got to make sure we frame the context of this massive border operation, and that is not what's going on. What we know, we see these attacks on quote unquote democratic-led cities who've taken in some of the immigrants, and really some backlash from the mayors have received for creating housing and shelters for these folks when they have their own immigrant problems. But I just can't help to think, Jonathan, it's like, I mean, this country is tortured by this issue of immigrants, right? I mean, go back and look at the history, and we could see newsreels from the Ellis Island days in the early 20s and the 30s when America was just fighting each other. Why are we letting these people in? Oh, well, they're building the railroads. Why are we letting these people in? Oh, they're building infrastructure for New York City and building subways in Chicago. So let's be very conscious of that. That, again, I want to emphasize, no one's advocating bad people to come into this country, but I think the country is built on this sense of how do we create opportunity, which goes to, again, some of the policies. What we haven't heard, Jonathan, maybe you fill me in. Have you heard any job creation plans by this president that point to how does he plan to get America back to work?
Yeah, so many of the promises that Donald Trump seems to have. Well, I think we should probably pause here and say with a certain degree of with a level of certainty that the his promises really sat in the background. They were there, but they weren't forward so much as the rhetoric was, which was that Haitians were eating dogs in Ohio, which was that it was all about the price of eggs, which was that I'm the only one who can fix it, and Kamala Harris is trash. That was about the extent of the MAGA universe, led by Donald Trump. So I don't know that we can really say that there was so much talk of even jobs, other than that he would bring them back. But you know, one of the interesting things here is that and it probably shouldn't be lost on us that the Biden administration's policy record was very effective over his 4 years. He was by most measures, certainly the statistical ones, he was he has been a very um, productive and prolific president, and some would even list him among the greats. That's the debate we can have another time. But I mentioned that because it made it extremely difficult for Donald Trump to run against him, which is why he got to run against the border after hemming up the deal that had been cobbled together in Washington in Congress by senators, which is why so much of the rhetoric was vitriolic, and focused on demonizing his opponent Kamala Harris. And he didn't, if we recall, didn't have wasn't pressed necessarily to provide many more answers about his economic plan beyond tariffs. And tariffs, again, are one of the things that, looking forward to his first 100 days, are one of the things that he promises to get in motion right away from day one. I haven't heard very much, to your point, about a jobs plan. His incoming treasurer was on the Hill just several days ago, saying that making permanent the Trump tax cut was a priority. Again, not very much Main Street news, and how to affect the everyday man. So that part remains to be seen. There's a very big difference between running for office and running office, and so that's what we're about to find out right now. Questioning whether we're going to see a whole different Donald Trump than we saw before, or is this an emboldened Donald Trump that we're expecting in these over these next 4 years, in this next 100 days?
Yeah, great. Yeah, great points, Jonathan. For those just tuning in, you're watching live pre-inauguration coverage on Politics in Color. Feel free to check out politicsincolor.com. Jonathan and I are here this morning, but we want to invite you back this evening for our live coverage that will feature some wonderful guests who will give us perspectives on the economy, on policy. We will have some wonderful conversations. So please make sure you bookmark us. Tune back in at 8 p.m. Central. I'm sorry, 8 p.m. Eastern. Back on Politics in Color to tune us in. Jonathan and I are just setting the stage. I just see that the president-elect and the vice president-elect are about to get are at a service at St. John's Church, which is traditional for the president-elect and vice president-elect to get to go to service before the formal ceremony, as we all know, has been shifted from outside to inside. All the festivities are going to be taking place primarily at the Capital One Arena, where it's expected to be a packed house of about 20,000 folks. And there are traditional sets of balls all around the Capitol this evening. I'm not sure what the final number is. Jonathan, I know back during my days in DC, that was certainly always a crazy festive time, certainly during the Clinton era, certainly during the President Obama and even President Biden. There were just balls and excitement and buzz all around town.
Well, there's been some buzz around inauguration festivities recently, particularly among fans of some of our entertainers, including Snoop Dogg and Nelly, and I believe Rick Ross, and a number of other performers who performed in inauguration-related festivities. And those personalities have taken up quite a bit of heat in the community.
You know it, and that's we've encountered this during the Trump's first presidency. We had folks like Kanye West and so many others who ended up supporting it, and it's really interesting to see because I was just reading a quote from Nelly's PR person saying, "Well, look, I respect the president. I respect the president." Um, and I respect the office, of the presidency. I heard Carrie Underwood say this, and so many of the other artists and performers who have opted to come to the event. And look, this is the president of the United States of America, right? This is the focal point of democracy in the world. The world looks at us as the symbol, right? What we have to hope for is that continues through in the most positive sense at all. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day, Jonathan. I mean, because you think about our lifetimes. I mean, we survived the assassination of President Kennedy in 1963. We went through a tumultuous 1960s with the Vietnam War and President Johnson and the horrific assassination of Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, who, by the way, yes, this is Martin Luther King's birthday. So how ironic is all of this, right, Jonathan?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I mean, that the election, the inauguration.
Yeah, and for some people, that's all this is today.
Right. And we know Reverend Al Sharpton and the National Action Network is doing a very significant event in Washington the same time as the inauguration. Among many activities are the inauguration. And we went through the Kennedy, we went through the Richard Nixon, Watergate era. We went through Ronald Reagan and this whole period that really shifted to upper classes and wealthy, to a very vibrant economy that when you think about the growth of the internet, and then we got to the 2000s and the 2010s, and here we are in the 2020s now, dawning on the age of a new America in so many different ways that I'm hoping and praying that the goodness and the strength of this company will sustain any blows that it takes in a negative sense, that will help us continue to show that beacon of democracy. That's why people come here, because we do great things, not to tear down institutions that really are done for personal benefit. And I think that's where the fear is.
Donald Trump's first, and again, politicsandcolor.com joining the conversation. Several more moments left before this program concludes, and we look forward to our evening programming. But I was saying, Donald Trump, his first term really was a laboratory for the United States Constitution and its institutions. And you can probably say that that's been true of even his post presidency, as he's fought back successfully. You probably could say, not probably, that he's fought back successfully legal challenges that he's faced. So the question becomes for everyday people, and certainly those of us in the press who are observing and looking on, is how much more of a laboratory will this next 4 years be? How much more can you shake the Coke bottle before it fizzes? And we're about to find out what America under pressure can look like. Um, uh, Certainly, his cabinet selections have been questionable, I guess is a friendly word to use. Um, uh, if you want to be gracious, um, he's wiser, if that's a word anyone. I'd like to be the first to say that I'm the first person to use the word wiser with regard to Donald Trump. But he certainly is more knowledgeable about the process. Um, and so he's able to take advantage of it in a way that he wasn't able to before. And certainly, at least retribution has now been taken off the table because we see here in his last his waning moments as president of the United States, Joe Biden has issued preemptive pardons for Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dr. Fauci, who was the longtime scientist who led the COVID-19 endeavor, who took on massive heat from the MAGA right in the wake of his work on that. Liz Cheney, and who was a member of the January 6th committee, as well as all members of the January 6th committee and their staffs. So at least retribution has been taken off the table now with that late news coming in before then. But beyond that, we really don't know. We don't know how much more Donald Trump can and will press against this traditional America that we once had and once knew through all of those periods in history that you just itemized.
You got it. I think that there is a Trump energized. There's a Trump unmatched by what we may ever see again. So as we're wrapping up the show tonight, I want to remind folks to join us again for an even more robust conversation at 8 o'clock tonight on politicsandcolor.com. There'll be a number of events, probably a number of signed executive orders that we'll dive into. We'll have a great host of guests, including Dr. Linwood Tauheed, an associate professor of economics, Dr. Shantella Sherman, historian and journalist and author, John Jeter, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, Dr. Jim Kavanaugh, an independent journalist who has a wonderful blog on Substack, The Polemicist, and then Tom Porter, a longtime activist and scholar. So we're going to get into some of these issues, and we hope that during the course of the day, you look with wide open eyes, that you look with hope and opportunity to kind of figure out where your lane is to potentially change what you can within your lives, and maybe organize as best as you can wherever that zip code may be. But certainly to as I've been telling friends and others, that we can't hide. This is not a time to hide and cry over spilt milk. It's happening. It's going on. So the result and the test of our resilience will be how we respond and how we react in a positive way that transform the elections in 2020 in the next 2 years for congressional seats, and what we do in 2028. So now's the time. We can't wait. We can't hide. We have to do stuff. And Jonathan, I think that's the message we have to send.
Yeah, we say here to join the conversation, and that's going to mean nationally, in your personal spaces, and certainly here at politicsandclothes.com. We thank you for joining us this morning. Look forward to seeing you again back here at 8 o'clock tonight.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. See you this evening.